Welcome back. Today we're hanging out with Joe Sanok. He is the author of Thursday is the New Friday, How to Work Fewer Hours, Make More Money, and Spend Time Doing What You Want. The book examines how the 4-day work week boosts creativity and productivity. Joe doesn't just write about a 4-day work week, he lives it. He went himself from working 60 hours a week to traveling with his family full-time in an RV, being independent with their location, while being even more productive at work. He believes that working for yourself in your own business shouldn't have to feel like a job. J-O-B, we left that for a reason, right? So working smarter and limiting the time you spend on things that don't matter can definitely help. So Joe is the host of the popular podcast, you are the host of the Practice of the Practice podcast, which is reorganized around one of the top 50 podcasts worldwide with over 100,000 downloads each month. This is amazing. I can't even get my tongue wrapped around all this great stuff. So he talks to best-selling authors, experts, scholars, and business leaders and innovators throughout the week. And he's been doing that for over 6 years. Well, Joe, thanks for being on this show.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I was super intrigued. I mentioned before we hit record about the RV life. I think through the pandemic and all these sexy Instagram buses and van life things people are doing, it's becoming more and more popular, but it's not always glamorous, is it?
No, that's what I thought it was going to be, is like that Instagram picture on the coast. And the reality was most of the time we were in RV parks, and for 2 months we had a guy next to us that never put his pants on and always had just like whitey tighties on while he's changing his fluids and stuff. But there were those campgrounds that we found that were just amazing. But in the middle of the pandemic, so many of the county parks were just shut down, and that's where you find these amazing views. And so we ended up in a lot of different spots that we'd go for day trips into the national parks, and that's where we saw some amazing things.
Yeah, absolutely. As a traveler myself, and growing up with parents who always had an RV, I always loved the idea. But for me, like after 2 days without a shower, I'm kind of like, so when are we getting a hotel or going home? So I really admire people that take on that lifestyle. But really with digital nomad, being a digital nomad, being an entrepreneur, we sign up for it for that glamour, for the benefits, for the freedom. And then if you're anything like me, you end up finding it's not all unicorns and rainbows over there. So I would like to take a step back and hear your journey, from that 60-hour work week into working less and being more efficient. Like, what's your story? How did you come upon all these insights?
Well, I would say with a 6-year-old and 10-year-old that are both girls, most of my world is unicorn and rainbows right now. I often have glitter in my hair, and as a single dad, it's just like that's my world of getting my hair done by 2 sweet little girls. So my story is that I went to college, followed a very typical route, did psychology and comparative religion as my undergrad, and then traveled around for a bit before grad school. Then after grad school, just followed the nonprofit route, then went into working at community mental health and eventually a college campus. So very traditional 40-hour work week. Both my parents worked for the schools. My dad was a school psychologist, my mom was a school nurse. And so I often got the message that if you're really good at what you do, then you'll have no problem getting a job. The whole business side of things was never on my radar. But really, I just started a counseling private practice on the side to pay off student loans. I thought, if I could just do a handful of sessions each week, that's like an extra $1,000 a month, and I could pay these student loans off really quickly. But then I quickly saw that I had no business skills in that area at all. I had never taken a business class, never took a marketing class. So I started reading and listening to podcasts, and eventually thought, if I start a podcast, this was 2012 or so, if I start a podcast and just start talking about what I'm learning, I'm sure there's other therapists out there that would like to learn that. And at the time, there were no business therapy podcasts. So right away, I was the #1 podcast for counselors, which it's good to find a market where there's nobody.
The power of niching down. No one wants
100%. Yeah. And I think for a while, I thought I had to become this regular business person, but when you think about it, I mean, a therapist is making $150 to $300 an hour. So if you can teach them how to make an extra couple hours worth of work, like they're going to pay more than what they're already making. And so very quickly to have that consulting be $500 to $1,000 an hour was a quick jump and easy compared to if it was just general kind of business marketing. And then over time, eventually left that full-time job and then sold the counseling practice and now just do the consulting work. That's what I do.
Yeah, no, I can relate so much. Also a psychology major, also went into kind of academics because that's what my parents did. And I think there's so much relatability to that. Like, well, this is what everyone around me says, and I'll just like follow this path. And so what insight you had to start a side hustle or do something on the side, just to pay down loans faster. And I'm curious, I'm assuming, that happened. And then what was the insight or the inspiration for you to finally go full time into your own thing and sell that practice?
Yeah, I remember the moment when I was still working my full-time job at the community college. I had my counseling practice on the side and my podcast, and I had just upgraded to this corner office, view of the water with my quote side gig. 4 office suite, amazing location, right downtown, view of the bay. And I would scoot over there for like a lunch session and then do them in the evenings or go in the morning before my 9 to 5. And I was coming back to my regular full-time job, leaving this corner office view of the bay, walking down the steps to my basement office where I didn't even have a window. And I was just running the numbers in my head and realized I'm making more in my side gig than I'm making at my full-time job. And so then when my second child was born, took the time to really take the full Family Medical Leave Act and worked about 20 hours a week so that I could cover the health insurance. Both my daughters had heart issues, so really needed to make sure that I was being smart. I was the only income earner for the family. And so really took my time with it, but every month was better than the month before. Every month just kept like growing. And then eventually when I left that full-time job, that next summer I said, okay, I'm completely in charge of my schedule again. Why don't I take Fridays off just as an experiment, which I think is one of those insights that people that really achieve kind of high level things, they view so much of life as an experiment instead of pass fail. And so it was like this summer, I'm going to just take Fridays off. We'll see what happens. And in the fall, I can always go back to 5 days a week. But every month was financially better than the month before and the month before. And I realized that when you work less, you actually do your top level things. And then you're forced to either drop the ball, to outsource, to use software as a service, have some automation, or just hand it off to another team member. So then I just kept doing these time experiments and then started sharing that with my consulting clients.
Okay, you lost me a little bit there and how much you
Yeah.
thought about the transition, because you had your numbers, you were savvy. I totally understand, health insurance and like providing for your family. I was the one that was like, it is F this S o'clock. I am out of here. I don't understand why anyone would work 40 hours. I just quit it all like in an instant, seriously. And then I had to figure it out. Get to those like, income making activities and kind of, messily put things together. But I think we both landed on an awareness that the 40 hours of working every week just doesn't make sense for those of us who want to earn great money and provide for a family and experience life or, go somewhere every now and then. So I know you talk a lot about this kind of societal history, and I'd love for you to talk to us, for those of us who are still wondering if I should stay comfy and cozy and work Monday through Friday. What is the history of this 40-hour work week and what is it doing to us?
Yeah. Well, I think and I know your audience are out of the box thinkers. They're like innovators, dreamers. And so for me, I'm the same way where I love to understand, how did we even get here where this thing that feels super normal maybe actually isn't. And so actually to get to the 40-hour work week, we have to go a little bit farther back to the Babylonians about 4,000 years ago. So the Babylonians looked up at the sky and they saw the sun, the moon, Earth, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. So they saw 7 major celestial things. So they made up the 7-day week. The Egyptians had an 8-day week and the Romans had a 10-day week. So let's just pause there. The 7-day week is totally made up by the Babylonians and how they looked at space. So that's made up. We made up the 7-day week. We could just as easily have a 5-day week and have 73 of them in a year. So
Mm.
fast forward to the late 1800s, early 1900s, the average person was working 10 to 14 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week. They were working nonstop. They had a farmer's schedule. They were working in industry and all these things, rebuilding Chicago after the fire, all these things that was just a terrible way of living. So in 1926, when Henry Ford instituted the 40-hour work week at Ford to sell more cars. So he had the belief that his people weren't going to buy a car. His Ford employees would not buy a car just to get to work faster. But if they had a weekend to look forward to and they wanted to quickly go see their friends and their family and they didn't want to ride a horse everywhere, well, that would actually sell more cars. So in order to sell more cars, he instituted the 40-hour work week. So what we can do is we can say for the evolution of humanity, that was a great gift. It was a giant step forward compared to 10 to 14 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week. And we can also say we've outgrown that. So you look at the 80s and 90s, there's TGIF on ABC with Full House and Urkel and all that. We see that Friday really starts to be a half worked day. It's slowly moving over into the weekend category. I like to often say that, Friday's been cheating on the work week with the weekend for long enough. Let's just call it what it is. And it's been having an affair. We
Yeah.
know this. We know this. Fridays when we host birthday parties or baby showers or do a stupid team building activity. So why don't we just move it over to the weekend? And then the research actually shows us that we're moving away from that industrialist model. And the pandemic was that final kind of nail in the coffin where we all said globally, why are we working this way? Why are we doing it this way? Even those of us that are in charge of our own schedules during the pandemic, I'm sure that we had insights in, whoa, all these things I thought were essential actually aren't. And so the 7-day week was made up. The 40-hour work week was made up less than 100 years ago. And we are the generation post-pandemic that get to recreate what this looks like moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. When the pandemic started and my family was starting to go on to Zoom, part of me was kind of like, yeah, see, haha, like you can do it this way,
Yeah.
Totally understand that there's something missed of being in person, right? But I have family working in education right now, and they're realizing how I don't need to be in the office all day for this one thing. Yes, maybe to teach school, you do, right? But there's so much that you can do way more effectively if you just start to think outside of this box that, no offense, Joe, but like one white dude made, however, to sell
No, seriously.
itself, right?
The industrialists were a whole bunch of white dudes that told us how to live. And like, is that what we believe anymore? I mean, they told us people are parts of a machine. Like when I look at a person, I don't think, what's your function? I think, who are you as a unique person? Like what do you dream of? And
Yes.
we aren't just pieces of a machine anymore.
Right.
But that's what the industrialists sold us on. And so we know that we've moved away from the industrialist mindset in almost every other way, except how we live our work week.
Right. Well, and that industrialism makes us work like machines, where the more you can do, the more you can create, the less breaks you take, the more, a reward that you're supposed to get. But we've had so many folks on this show, and them in your own life, who have worked for corporate and burn out. They literally kill themselves, or they become ill, or, the burnout thing is so real because we're being treated like machines. So what do you know about the correlation between slowing down, not working like a machine, and leaning into more of what you're talking about, like being effective, thinking about dreams, less than outputs? Like, what's this connection between slowing down and productivity?
Yeah. Well, I think the best way to kind of explain this is through a story. So when we're stressed out and maxed out, we default to what we already know. We don't try innovative things. When I was in Nepal, this would have been like 2001. I was at the beginning of a trail with my friend Todd and a couple Peace Corps volunteers. Our guide said to us, if we get chased by a wild rhinoceros, climb a tree. In life, there's times you should ask some follow-up questions. And this was one of them. And I did not at all. I mean, like, what kind of tree should we climb? How often does this happen? Like daily or monthly or yearly? Could we practice this technique that I've never done? But I didn't ask any of those follow-up questions. So we enter the jungle, we're hiking through, it's about an hour or so, and we come upon a wild rhino. And I have one of those point and click cameras before digital cameras. And so I take a picture. I don't know how it turned out. I do the little zzz, 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 and I take a step forward because I think if this picture is blurry, I want to like really get a picture of this rhino. So I take another picture of the rhino And at this point, I should have just been satisfied with the pictures I had taken, but instead I took another step forward, at which point this rhino charges our group and I just take off running. So I knew that I was faster than my friend Todd, at least for the first 100 yards. We were in track together. I was a sprinter. He was long distance. At least for 100 or 200, I got him. After that, who knows? And we've got the Peace Corps volunteer human shields behind us. So we're just running through the woods until we don't hear this rhino anymore. So we turn around, we come back, our guide shimmies down a tree and yells at us, "Why didn't you run up a tree?" So why didn't I run up a tree? In the midst of being chased by a rhino, I'm not going to try something new. I'm not going to try something out of the box or innovative. I know I can outrun Todd and especially these two Peace Corps volunteers. So I go with what I know. And that's how we live so much of our business life, that we're stressed out, we're maxed out. Our weekends are full of soccer practice. Then you go grocery shopping, then you got to mow your lawn. And then next thing you know, it's Monday morning and then you're stressed out from that. And you just do it all over again. If we stop and we say, how do I make my weekend or my downtime the most effective to prep my brain to genuinely relax, to genuinely be able to get into flow state, to genuinely allow me to just feel the happiness of the universe instead of just always being stressed out and maxed out. And so there's little things we can do, like micro breaks that the research supports. There's also kind of large time blocking that we can talk about so that when you're working, you're doing it in a way that actually triggers the brain to be more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something so powerful about the intentionality of rest or of breaks. Like you said, great, you have time off, but then you fill that with other stressful activities. Or, for me, it's like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. I literally just took a true vacation last week where I told everyone, like, out of office, like not taking any calls. And it took me like 3 days to like settle into that, right? I was still on like, should I check email? Like, should I be doing this? What if I got ahead? What if I did this while I was on vacation? And it really took that reminder of like, I'm intentionally unplugging so I can show up when I'm back and crush all of that. But without the awareness or the intention of like, this is what I'm doing, we're just on that hamster wheel all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what we're seeing is, let's just look at micro breaks. So the University of Illinois did this really interesting study where they brought in college students and they gave them a very boring task. And so what they were looking at was what's called vigilance decrement. Vigilance, how well we pay attention to something. Decrement meaning breaking down over time. So that the way we pay attention at the beginning, by the end, it's gone down over time. So giving a boring task. And the traditional way of thinking was that you've got this kind of glass of water of energy and you just kind of pour it out. When it's gone, it's gone. You just got to kind of recuperate. Maybe you go, take a nap, you come back the next day and work on it. You can't really build it up. There's not an optimization. So they wanted to challenge that. So they gave these college students a 4-digit number. Say it was 4312. And every time a 4-digit number came up, they had to see if it was their number. And so tons of other numbers, then 4312, they hit a button. And so over an hour period of time or so, there's all these 4-digit numbers coming up, super boring task. They saw vigilance decrement, meaning at the end of the study, they were paying attention way less than they did at the beginning of the study. That's what we would expect. The second group though, came in, did the exact same thing, given 4-digit number, click the button, but at the 1/3 mark, they stopped and they said, we put you on the wrong computer, go take a quick 1-minute break. So they gave them a 1-minute break that interrupted the task. They didn't have their phones. They didn't have anything digital. So a 1-minute break without any sort of anything to do. Come back for the next third of the study, they do it again, and then they take another 1-minute break, and then they complete the study. They found there was no vigilance decrement at the end, meaning that they were paying attention just as well at the end of the study as they had at the beginning, even though they did the same period of time. Mm-hmm. So let's just think about why that happens. I mean, imagine you've walked the same trail your whole life and you were told there's tigers on this trail. I mean, our brains are really old. They're still in that primitive mindset oftentimes where we want to be safe and secure. And you've never seen a tiger for 40 years. You're not going to pay attention. If you did, that wouldn't be functional to your life. You'd be, not getting as much done as you need to for survival. But imagine you've heard that there was a tiger seen yesterday and your best friend was chased by it and narrowly escaped death. You're going to be more vigilant. Our brains are the exact same way when we interrupt things. We can do all sorts of hacks to make our brains pay attention in a way that it just doesn't realize it's being tricked. And so even that 1-minute break can be enough to eliminate vigilance decrement. So there's all these different things that neuroscience is starting to reveal to us that we can use to be more effective, but then also to slow down on the other side.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And I say this in other, like, especially with health coaches or these kind of like productivity hacks, is it's so simple. We want these like sexy things like biohacking and grass-fed butter coffee, like things to like make our brains. And it's so many times the simple things of breaks throughout the day and like taking a beat in between projects or in between podcast interviews. For me today, I love the simplicity of that productivity hack, really, that you just shared. And it makes so much sense for the way that we're built. And I think we can all see that in our day-to-day life. How many times are you in back-to-back meetings and you spent half of it on Facebook? Been
Yeah.
there, done that, not paying
Well, it's like
attention.
even today. So I think I have 8 podcast interviews today. One person accidentally double booked today. And so I had a free half hour in the middle of the day. So I could have chose to jump into email. But if I'm like, I want to show up just as strong for the last podcast as for the first one, what does my body need? So I texted my neighbor and we did some laps around the neighborhood. And so I got outside, I moved my body, within 20 minutes, I'm like ready to go again. So after this, before my next one, I'm going to go make a green smoothie. I'm going to step outside. I'm going to come back in. It only takes a couple minutes to do that, but we think that we're being more productive by jumping onto email. But actually, what would the second half of my day podcast look like if I had just been on email and just pushed myself instead of saying, what are a few micro breaks I can take that actually optimize my brain? Even the way I do my lighting in here, I do this lighting only for podcasting so that it triggers my brain to think differently. So when I'm writing, I have a much different lighting in here. I have different headphones I use. I have different music that I put into my ears. So it triggers my brain to quickly get into that flow state. So there's all these things that are being discovered that if we aren't using them, we think we're busy, but we're just kind of buying into that hustle culture.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something like really powerful in that those micro slowdowns or that intentionality really does help you crush it. Like it helps you hustle when you need to hustle, right? You're not saying that this is just about meditating all day or taking 8 hours to drink your smoothie and then, oh, well, there goes another day. I'll try something again tomorrow, right? It's that these micro breaks in this process helps us become better at the work and the hustle, if you want to call it that, right?
Yeah. And I think that what you're talking about, that kind of extreme thinking of, well, it's either going to be on the woo woo or it's going to be on the productivity. So many books are like that. The productivity books are, here's the 5 steps. If you don't do it, you're out. So it's a machine. Or we have the woo woo side that's like, make a vision board, don't do anything about it, manifest it to the universe and hope it comes true. Like that's still the industrialist mindset. And so the shift that we're seeing is more of an evolutionary mindset where we see a book or these types of things as a menu to say, you can learn these things, you can adapt, you can grow, you can evolve differently. So my book, for example, it's a menu. It's saying, here are things that I know you're a smart person, that you can do some experiments and say, well, this didn't work for my industry. This did. And that's not a pass fail. It's not that it's screwed up. It's that that menu didn't work for you. How many times we have been told to batch or to sprint, when the reality is there's different types of sprint types, just like there's personality types. And if we don't know those types, well, of course, we're not going to be good at sprinting or batching or getting things done. And so this emerging research really can start to inform us in a much different way than maybe, even just a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love what you said about a menu because it's back to that experimenter's mindset, right? There isn't
Yeah.
going to be a one size fits all where you have the same exact routine every day for the next 30 years. If you're an entrepreneur, right? If you're going to go like work in a desk job and like that is how you're going to live life, then okay, then maybe you can follow the same menu or the same recipe every single day forever. But I love what you're saying in your book. It's like, try this today, try that today, see what fits, what works for you, do more of it, and then set it down when it stops giving you the effect that you're looking for. Is that right?
Yeah. And I think that part of it is, we hear so often, set a 5-year goal. And, in one part of the book, I talk about why 5-year goals are a waste of time. I mean, I would hope that you're a different person than you were 5 years ago. If 5 years ago you said what your goals should be today, she probably would have been playing too small. Same with me. In the same way, if I say, in 5 years, where am I going to be? I'm going to play too small. And I'm not going to even have an idea of what doors are going to open in the next 6 months or a year. So that's why even just looking at 6-month goals, like shorter goals that we can just run full tilt after, but then also setting those goals to what are the clear, hard and soft boundaries that we're going to set for ourselves. So what are things that you will never do? So for example, I wrote a book about why you shouldn't work on Friday. So if there's a consulting client that says, I can only meet you on Friday, I will always say no to that person. I can't, that's just a hard boundary. Whereas if on a Friday morning, my assistant texts me and says, the business is on fire, all these things have happened. Sure, I'm not going to be like, just wait till Monday morning, let the thing burn. Like, I'm going to help put it out. But then we're going to reverse engineer what happened here. Why did I have to be involved? Why didn't you feel like you had the capacity to be able to put out this fire on your own? And then we'll say, okay, here's some things we're going to change in your job role. Maybe she couldn't log into the admin for some reason. Well, maybe you should have admin access. Maybe there's other things that we can put in place as a process so that I'm not the one on a Friday morning helping put out this fire. And so having those soft boundaries, having those hard boundaries, figuring out what you're going to add to your weekend, what you're going to remove from your weekend. Those are all things that help you then start to build up a weekend or even a work week that help you feel refreshed when you get back to work.
And that's the goal, right? To show up as your best and not just create another job for yourself as an entrepreneur.
100%.
All of this is like juicy and interesting, and we want to know all these other hacks, and we want to choose something off the menu. So Joe, where can people, get access to your book and continue this conversation with you?
Yeah, the book's available everywhere. So if you have a favorite bookstore, they can pre-order it. You can get it from Amazon or wherever you prefer to order your books. It's just called Thursday is the New Friday. So it's available everywhere. And then if people buy more than 5 books, they can submit their receipt over at thursdayisthenewfriday.com. We have a bunch of extra bonuses like mastermind groups and intensive teachings with me. If you get a group of either 5 or 10 books, you get access to that over at thursdayisthenewfriday.com. And then on my personal website, which is for my writing and speaking, joesanok.com, we're putting together all the experiments that people are doing around Thursday is the New Friday. This isn't going to be me as the Henry Ford. This is going to be us reshaping society together. And so if you do a unique experiment and you say, this is how I made Thursday the New Friday, here's what worked, here's what didn't work, that gives other people options to pull from the menu. And so as we get more and more of these experiments, we're going to be putting those on joesanok.com. Right at the top, there's a big experiments button where you can submit or read other people's experiments. Also, if you want to host a public book club, we're going to be putting information on there about it, just so that we can help support community around this. Because we know this isn't going to be us that are the power brokers. It's going to be all of us together. So in the same way the Babylonians made up the 7-day week, Henry Ford made up the 40-hour work week, we get to reshape society to make Thursday the New Friday.
Joe, I love it. I have some experiments I'll have to send your way. Nothing sexy again. Nothing sexy.
Hey. But it all is. I mean, it's us recreating society together.
I love this. Well, thank you so much. We'll make sure that folks can go check out Thursday is the New Friday and continue their experiments, because at the end of the day, this is about making your dream life your real life. And thank you so much, Joe, for all of this insights. I'll be back next week with yet another inspiring guest.